Manuel. It's always confusing, these time zones. For me, it's evening. For you, it's evening. But yeah, we don't know where other people are. So that's the thing with streaming. What we talk about is front end development and mostly accessibility. And who am I to talk about this? I still don't know for sure, but they say I am a specialist by now. I work at ING, which is a Dutch bank. And there I am part of the team that makes the web components, the reusable components that are used throughout the organization. And I am responsible for the accessibility. And I'm just not just responsible. I also take responsibility, which is an important part of it. And tonight we have a special guest. Introduce yourself, thank you.
Hi, my name is Manuel. I'm a front-end developer. I work for the city of Vienna, and there I'm responsible for, front-end stuff, writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, mostly vanilla JavaScript. And I'm also, to some degree, responsible for web accessibility stuff because I wouldn't call myself a specialist, I don't know, but I'm kind of specialized in web accessibility and performance stuff.
Yeah.
Anything that makes experiences nicer to more people
Actually
and
usable. Yeah.
or actually usable. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm also a consultant, so I work with other companies to help them make websites accessible. I give workshops and I also audit websites. So people pay me to tell them if their websites are accessible, and if they're not, why and how they can make them more accessible. So these are the things I do on the side. And I also teach HTML and CSS in Vienna and in Salzburg. I don't know how you say it
Yeah.
in English. Salzburg.
Just say it in German, like Austrian or how you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so what kind of school do you teach? Or do you teach at multiple schools? Or how does it work?
Multiple schools. So there's one is a private institute called SAE. They're all around the world. I think also in the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. And they teach web development, web design and web development, and I teach HTML and CSS there. And I also teach at another college.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I found them, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're in the Netherlands. They're in Germany, in the States, and in some parts of Asia, North America. Yes.
All over the place, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And when you're not at home, like we all are these days, do you then travel to Salzburg or?
Yes, by train. So it's
Okay.
like, I don't know, a 3 hour ride or something, but it's only once or twice a year. So I don't do that regularly because my job at the city of Vienna is a full-time job. So everything I do, everything else I do is on top.
Yeah. Everything is extra.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So this is what I do for a living. And besides that, I have a website, matuzo.at.
Yeah.
That's my blog where I write about HTML and CSS from time to time. And I also maintain HTMHell.dev.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that website. Eric streamed his experience with
Yeah.
adding content to HTML last week. Yeah.
So, yeah, of course we're gonna mention it. It's hard to ignore. It's very hard to ignore. So that's very simple. It made me curious though. Was there anything before this? Did you have side projects like these, or?
No, not really. I would say that this is actually the first side project in terms of website. So another side project is a meetup and a conference I co-organized. It's called Web Clerks.
Yeah.
It used to be just a meetup, but we turned it into a conference pretty much exactly a year ago, almost a year ago. And we even had an online version like everyone else had this year. But like HTML is my first online side project, like
Okay.
code side project. Yes.
And what made you do this? I mean, did anybody force you, or was there something that prompted this, or how did it all start?
I mean, did anyone force me? I don't know. Developers kind of did. Code people like you and me write every day kind of forced me to do it, or like made me do it because um, I'm on Twitter, and every now and then I like to share like really interesting, and I'm using euphemism here, codes that I find online. So I like to share shitty and really, really bad HTML and CSS on Twitter. And about a year ago, I did that quite a lot because I was doing a lot of audits, and also I'm curious. Like when I see a website, I can almost smell a div button, and I just have to look under the hood and see if it's really, or how bad it is.
It makes you
So I'm really,
curious, right? Yeah, you cannot
yeah,
resist.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just have to open DevTools and check out what's going on. So I like to do that a lot, and then I share the bad findings, the findings. And I don't know if someone of my followers pointed it out, or if I realized it on my own, but at some point I realized that what I'm doing is not very constructive. Like it's fun to make fun of others,
Yeah.
or the code others did. Of course, I didn't blame or shame anyone. Like
Yeah,
I
but
didn't
getting mad is
tell
the easy
where I
part,
found.
right?
Yeah. But it wasn't very constructive. So I didn't tell people why things were bad. I just assumed that it is bad. And at some point, maybe someone pointed it out, I guess, I decided to turn this into a blog where I don't just share the bad code, but I explain why it's bad, and where I or other people offer a better alternative. So this is how it got started
So a bit,
about a
it
year
was a
ago.
bit basically what you were doing already, and then you got some feedback, and you turned it into something for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, and now it's in
And
a
something more useful. So it's not just like a repository or a collection of shitty HTML. It's a collection of shitty HTML um, with explanations and guidance on how to improve it.
Is that how you would describe it to other people as well? A collection of shitty HTML and how to improve it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty good
Yeah.
elevator pitch, right?
Yeah, and but the important part is it's not something I came up or people who contribute to the website came up with. It's like real life code. It's code that we found on websites, on actual live websites, and it's also usually not from websites that were built like, I don't know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but like stuff that went online in the last 2 or 3 years maybe.
Yeah, it's
So
an actual collection, like it's been gathered and not made up or anything.
yes. The only thing we do is that we get rid of stuff that's not necessary to understand the example. Like, I don't know, like ng attributes, like Angular attributes, or extra classes or stuff like that. So we get rid of that. And we also get rid of any content that would point to a specific website or to a specific company, because it's not about blaming and shaming anyone. It's about teaching mostly.
Yeah, I was about to say, is there an overlap with your role as a teacher, you think?
Um, yeah, kind of. The approach is different, because when I teach, I start with the basics and I explain how to write code the right way, or one of the right ways from the very beginning. But with HTML, it's the other way around. So you find something that has been written and then you deconstruct it. So it's a little bit different. I don't do that when I teach, actually. So I don't show too much code of others, because it's hard. When I look at the website, it's not a matter of seconds that I see that something is wrong. I need to take time to understand why they are doing stuff, and also have to put it in the right context to kind of try to find out why they made certain decisions. And if I see that the decisions have been made because they don't care, or maybe they don't know how to do it the right way, then I might put it on HTML.
Yeah.
If it's either, it's like if I can see for some reason that they didn't have any choice, any other choice, or maybe it's stuff that has been created by people who use the CMS, so by content creators. That's usually not the fault of the developer.
So a big part of it is trying to understand why,
Yes, absolutely.
and often a hard part as well, I guess.
Yeah.
And why do you focus on HTML? I mean, you could have focused on CSS or JavaScript, or why HTML?
I would say because Um, if you ask any web developer if they understand HTML or if they can write HTML, they will probably say yes. It doesn't matter if you're a front-end developer or a back-end developer, full stack, whatever that is. Most people will say, yes, I understand HTML. And if you ask people if they're good at writing HTML, I would assume that the majority would say yes, probably, or pretty good. But based on my experience as a teacher, as someone who almost daily looks at the code of others and who does audits, I would say that most developers are not good at writing HTML.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite. And this is why I focus on HTML. And also, there are so many websites that write and talk about, or developers that talk about CSS and JavaScript. It feels like the majority of blogs and talks is about JavaScript and CSS, but not too many people talk about HTML, just some grumpy accessibility experts. Most of them seem grumpy, at least.
And you joined them, yeah.
Yeah, and I joined them. I'm also one of those grumpy people. Yeah, so that's why the focus on HTML. There isn't too much. Like you can find stuff about HTML, but not too much. It goes deep and explains why would you use a button element and not a div.
Yeah, your story kind of reminds me of people that have like a website or a resume or whatever, and they have these sort of pie charts or bar, and they say HTML 90%.
Yeah.
And I never know what that means.
Yeah.
Do you know what it means? No.
No, I have no plan. It's just I think it's just a WordPress plugin that comes with a certain theme, and you just add some numbers, and nobody cares. It just looks. The animation is nice.
What's 90? What's 90%? What's the other 10% then? And how do you know that you're at 90%? It's just like people saying, "Hey, I know how to write HTML," and they can write something, but
yeah,
there's often
they know how it works.
Yeah, so you're looking for, like, let's say, proper HTML, and proper is always a terrible word to use, but I love to use it because who knows what's proper. But what makes a good case for HTML? You know, what's a good case for the website? What makes you say, "Hey, this is something we can use"?
So first of all, I try not to publish too much of the same thing on the website. So I want each submission to be kind of unique, or special in at least one way. So
not only div buttons then.
Yes, not only div buttons, but there is a hard focus for some reason on buttons and links, because people like to get that wrong a lot. So we only have about, I think, 23. I think your submission was the 23rd.
Yeah.
So not too much, but high quality content, I would say. And what makes it worth adding to HTML is that if I see a certain pattern and I believe that many people get it wrong, or if I see a repeated pattern, if I see one thing all over again on many different websites, it makes sense to add it to HTML. Or
so if something is a certain value in it because you see it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So the best example for that is the close button example. So I added a submission to the website with, I think, 10 or 12 different wrong ways of adding a close button, like in a modal window or in a dialog, for example.
All very creative.
Yeah. Do you want to look at it? Should we?
Yeah, sure.
Can I show
Talk
my
us through
screen?
it? Yeah.
Okay, let me just find it real quick. So let's see if I can do that. Can you see the website?
Yeah, it says you're presenting, and now I see it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is usually there's just one example on the website. For example, yours. It's called a card pattern, and you have a certain snippet, and you explain what's going on here and which parts should be fixed, and
Yeah.
then you offer a better solution.
And as
But
you
with
said,
this,
I try to anonymize it a bit and remove all the noise to focus.
yes,
Because there was so much
yes,
weird stuff going on already. I could focus on
yes.
what's left. Yeah.
It's actually incredible how much stuff we have to remove.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name. Someone published a tool called something like Decrepulator or something like that. I will have to look it up. So you can paste any HTML snippet. I think his name is Ian. You can paste any HTML snippet, and it will remove all kinds of unnecessary or superfluous attributes and class names and so on. So that's something that's quite handy. So, anyways, and with this special pattern, let's call it a pattern, the close button, actually it's straightforward. It's a button element, and then you have some kind of graphic. It could be an SVG or an image or a background image, for example, and you have link text that's usually hidden. So it's pretty straightforward, but there were so many different wrong implementations. For example,
This is a good remark, by the way, from the chat. I'm just going to interrupt you because that's how chat works. Somebody says, I particularly love the cases where you see someone trying to implement accessibility stuff, but in a way that makes it only worse. And then people say that accessibility is hard. Yeah, I think you're probably going to have an example for that as well, right?
Probably, yes.
And I've got the Decrepulator link. If you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'll share it in the chat so anybody can see. Oh, it's in the chat, of course. I'm going to share it in the chat with you. That's the big part.
Okay, cool.
So you don't have to look it up. But yeah.
So, for example, here's just an empty div as a button. This will probably only work for mouse users and people of touch devices if they can use their fingers, but not for screen reader users, not for keyboard users.
So it's a div with a background image. Or even a background image in the after, so not even in the thing itself.
Yeah. Yes. Using a pseudo element, and there's no text content, no alternative. It's just an empty div.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we explain why this is bad. You can't use the keyboard. There's no accessible name. It's not focusable, and so on.
I guess this is like the back to basics for div buttons.
Yeah, as basic as it gets.
Yeah.
This one is really interesting. This is one of my favorites. It's a div button, and there's content. It looks like an X or a close, I don't know, graphic or icon or whatever. But actually, it's the glyph for times, like in the multiplication sign, like in 2 times 2.
Okay, so it gets announced as times, I guess.
Yes. Or there are 2 different glyphs actually that get used. One gets announced as times, and the other one is multiplication X or multiplication sign or something like that.
Yeah, much in line with what we see on Twitter too much and too many times is that people use some fancy font, they think, to create some text, but it's not actually normal text. Nope. So this may look like an X, but it does not sound like an X. And not even close to sounding like close or whatever it is.
Yeah. Another great example is there is an icon or a glyph that looks like a burger icon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you use a screen reader, it announces trigram for heaven. Yeah. Or something like that.
Much better than hamburger menu or whatever.
Yeah, much better. Yeah, and there are many different other variations of this particular pattern. So you would think that it's straight, or at least for me, it's straightforward, but assumptions are always difficult and bad. So I just gathered these examples of, I think, about 10 different, 11 different implementations I found online.
Yeah.
And
each one worse than the other. Yeah.
There's the last one is when you use just the X, the letter X as the close button. And there's a nice quote by my friend Max Böck, who said, using X for your close buttons is like using salt in your coffee because it looks the same as sugar.
Yeah, visually it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks the same, but it's not the same.
Yeah, that's a lot of HTML, right? Looks the same but doesn't work the same. Oh, I've lost your sound again. Might be a cable. Yeah, I hear a click.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah, different microphone, I think, but I hear you.
Yeah. And now?
Now it's the better microphone. Yeah.
Okay. What's really funny is if I try to switch the microphone, the settings here, I get a drop down, but all the options are blank. So I see that there are 5 options, but it's like transparent text.
So it's Russian
I don't.
roulette, and you just have to guess.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
Like,
what I just did.
and that's how you find your examples, right?
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, that was a good example because like div buttons and close buttons, there are so many variations and so many ways to do it wrong. Like people get really creative, as I like to call it, because I used to study photography before I got into this whole accessibility thing. And one thing I liked about photography is that when I got out with my camera and what I came across, I could never imagine the things that I came across.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's also the code that I find sometimes, You open up a website, you start inspecting, and you're like, what is this? What is happening? And you cannot make it up. It's like the amount of creativity that you find is unbelievable. So that's something that I see now as a sort of parallel. That's a really clear one.
To answer your to finish answering your question,
Yeah.
so what makes a code snippet a perfect fit for HTML? It's basically something that a lot of people use and that you will find on many websites and that people like to get wrong a lot.
Yeah.
And when I say like, it's hard to say that something is wrong because it depends, but sometimes you can like you can definitely say it's wrong. Like using an empty div as a button is wrong. Like
just doesn't
there's
work.
no discussion.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work.
And then there's of course the cases that I was just plainly surprised by what I came across. I mean, it was trying to understand what was happening in that piece of code. I'm still not exactly sure what's happening.
Yeah.
Like somebody added screen reader only text saying there was an image. Well, there was an image, of course, but declaring that there's an image, I mean, you do some accessibility auditing as well.
Yeah.
I often notice when I start inspecting a website, the first thing I get is amazement. I just don't know where to start. I see so many things and it's so hard to focus. And when I saw this code snippet, I had the same kind of feeling. I was like, there's only a few lines of code, but so many things happening. Do you ever have that when you do an audit?
They get overwhelmed by what
Yeah.
I see. That there's so many things happening. It depends on what kind of audit I'm doing because most of the audits I do is audits of websites that claim that they are accessible. So most of them are okay because I work for an institution in Austria that gives certificates to companies that have accessible websites.
Yeah.
So if you think that if you're a company in Austria and you have a website and you think that your website is accessible, you would contact us, and it might happen that I will audit your website. So these websites are usually okay or actually pretty good.
Yeah. They should have the basics at least. That's what you'd expect.
Or actually more than the basics. Like usually they're good, at least good. Sometimes they're really good.
They're not looking on what to improve, but they want to get certified.
Yes, exactly. And I only rarely do audits of websites that have no that are not accessible at all. I rarely do that, but it happens from time to time, and this is tough because it takes just so much brain power and focus to deconstruct the whole thing and see why and how things are happening. So, for example, I recently did an audit, and for some reason, every link was in a form, and I just couldn't
Why?
explain why every link or every group of links was in a form. And I just didn't know. I thought a lot about it, and then had to ask on Twitter. I just asked my followers, "Can you help me with that? What's going on? Why did they put the main navigation in a form
Yeah,
with some
somebody in the
hidden
chat
fields, but there are
says
no buttons?"
maybe it's part of the CMS.
It's maybe part of the CMS or the framework, and I think they use it for state management, for server-side state management. So with every link you clicked, they use the form to save the current state of the website or save some information with the form. I don't know. It's some old Java stuff that was going on.
Some strange practice.
Yeah. So yeah, sometimes there's a sense of overwhelm. Like overwhelmed, is this a word? Like I get overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it.
That
Yeah.
happens. Yeah. So what's the first thing you do when you audit a website? You just mentioned that you open DevTools. So is this the first thing you do when you audit a website, or?
It depends, of course. That's the ever always correct answer. When I have found my structure and my ground, I try to go through the website by each criteria. So I start at WCAG 1.1.1, go through the entire page and see what's up. But often I just see so many things happening that I have to take notes first. You know, I see like, hey, what did they do here? What they do there? And don't forget about this. You'll probably run into this later. And it's just so many impressions at first that I make notes. And then slowly, while I go from criterion to criterion, I'll use these notes because there's often so much happening. I got to start somewhere.
Okay. What would you tell someone, maybe someone who's watching, who is not familiar with the WCAG criteria and who just wants to get a feeling or a sense for how accessible a website is? So what would, for someone who's not familiar with WCAG criteria, who's not an accessibility pro, what would you recommend checking first?
Well, I used to find that very troublesome because, as I think both know, WCAG is pretty big, and accessibility people know how to write, and they know how to write a lot. So what I did is sort of write a one-page advice, which has 4 simple basic things that everybody can test and can improve, and they're not developer specific, and they're not how do I say it? They're not developer specific, but also not specifically for designers or POs, or it's all testable and fixable. And that became solidstart.info. I don't know if you're familiar. I'm just going to share you the link and put it in the chat just to make sure.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar.
I would start there. So that focuses on being able to use the keyboards, having enough contrast, and offering alternatives, and keeping in mind the sizing, which I think are sort of basics that help everybody, which I really like. Because, as you just said as well, to get certified, you have to be accessible. So you have to conform to certain rules. But there's more than just conforming to rules. There's also inclusive design, which is often using best practices and actually thinking about usability of people, for people. And I hope that the things that I mention increase usability for everybody. So not just people with disabilities, not just people with specific pieces of assistive technology, but a lot of people should benefit from these relatively simple things. And so far, I've only heard positive feedback. So either everybody's too quiet and not speaking up, or it's actually good. So I hope it's good. And where do you usually start?
Actually, exactly where you start. I remember sharing this website. I'm not sure anymore if I was aware that you made it. I guess
That's
like to
good.
forget things.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, yeah. I also start with the keyboard. This is actually the easiest way to get a feeling for a website. At least for me, I just put the trackpad or the mouse aside and just use the keyboard and try to navigate the website with a keyboard. And if it doesn't work at all, you can almost like immediately say that the website is not accessible, because if it's not accessible for keyboard users, it's probably also not accessible for screen reader users. And there are probably also many other things going on that could or should be fixed.
Oh, this is new. I've got spam in my chat.
Oh,
That's absolutely new, but I'm gonna deal with that later.
okay.
Um,
What are they trying to sell? Is it interesting?
I can buy followers and viewers.
Oh,
Wow. I'm gonna
I
save
recently
those
got
links.
a spam email and they tried to sell oranges.
They were selling you oranges. Well,
Oranges.
one of these people, there are two people right now, and one of them is called Bananas. So
Okay.
maybe they're related somehow. I don't know.
Maybe.
Oranges. So did they good? Did they offer good prices or?
Oh yeah. I bought many oranges online.
I see. Are those on the table? Are those oranges or are they mandarins?
Yeah, this is the leftovers.
Ah, the leftovers. Yeah, you had the good ones already, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's what I usually try to do. And for the people watching, listening, watching back, one reason why I really like the keyboard for testing stuff is because a lot of assistive technology makes use of the keyboard API. So often when you test things with the keyboard and it works well, you probably have things covered for your assistive technology as well. So, for example, the screen reader, not because everybody uses a screen reader, but it's just such a good testing tool. If it works for a keyboard, a lot of things will work for the screen reader as well. So that's why it's in the list. And
Yeah,
it's something
and
I have to
usually
repeat. Yeah.
and usually the barrier for getting started is really low, because most people have a keyboard, I would assume, or can use a keyboard. So it's like pretty easy to get started. Like learning how to use a screen reader is much harder than learning how to use the keyboard
Yeah.
exclusively on a website.
Yeah, because everybody has a mouse as well. And mostly websites are tested with a mouse, but it's very hard to code without a mouse or with a mouse. So probably you have a keyboard as well. And I used to have a web store, and I think 2/3 or something of our audience was using a mobile phone or a tablet, maybe even more than that. So we
Wow.
might test it with a mouse, but that's not the most common thing. That's not guaranteed at all. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I really like the keyboard. So I'm curious, HTML. This was number 23, I think we added. Do you have plans for the future?
I don't know. You mean like extending the website?
Yeah, maybe
Or doing-
functionality or I don't know. It's not my website, so I don't know what your plans can be, of course.
Okay, so I mean, the website is pretty, like the setup of the website is pretty basic. It's an
Yeah.
11t website. It uses a static site generator, or 11t is a static site generator, and it's just a bunch of markdown files compiled to HTML. And I have a not very sophisticated node script that makes screenshots of the HTML automatically, and that's pretty much it. So there's a lot of improvement or room for improvement when it comes to technical setup, but it's fine. It works. I don't know
Yeah.
if it was hard to use when you tried to add,
No,
add
I
stuff.
think simplicity is very nice because
Okay.
there are so many open source projects where you have to like install 50 things, and no matter what your computer is made of, it will start ventilating and heating up and everything. And this just works really fast, and you have to edit not 20 files, but I think I had to edit 1 or 2 files.
Yeah.
I think 1 file because I was already an author. So yeah.
Yes.
So that's
file.
really easy. I like that.
Yeah. So I don't see that I would change anything. I mean, I want to add dark mode. There is an issue actually, an open issue.
Yeah,
So if someone wants to add dark mode, please do it, and do it
because it is
accessible.
open source, of course, so anybody can do it.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah. And recently, I mean, I was thinking if it would make sense or if people might be interesting if I turned HTML into a video course or maybe something like a book or something like that.
Yeah.
So extending it, going deeper, not just a bullet list of things that I see in a bad example and that I explain, but like going really deep and actually testing it and debugging it using screen readers, also mobile phone screen readers on mobile phones and stuff like that. I was thinking about doing something like that in the
Yeah.
future, maybe.
I got some feedback from streaming that, and also from the Solid Start, that maybe it would be interesting to write an introduction to HTML semantics. So maybe we should just share the workload, because I think you're a bit passionate about that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's interesting to see where that will go. I think the content speaks for itself, and keeping it simple is one of its strengths. Maybe you have also other projects planned. I don't know.
So this is one project I have. The other one is called frontendbookmarks.com,
Yeah,
and this is maybe I can share my screen again.
yeah. That's also one very rich of information. So
Okay, let me try again.
and in the
Can you
meantime,
see?
yeah. In the meantime, if people have questions about HTML, just drop them in the chat, and we'll certainly ask them. Or about front end bookmarks, of course.
Of course. Can you see the website?
Yeah.
So what this is this is pretty much just a collection of articles and talks grouped by HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and grouped by elements and attributes and properties and so on. So if you want to find an article about the, let's say, ARIA role description attribute, you will find some articles that I found and I link to this specific attribute. And there's also some basic explanations about the attribute and a code sample. Or you might want to learn something about the list style type property in CSS, and then you will find some articles that I found about this specific property. This is something that I actually built for myself because I like to read a lot in people's a lot of blogs and a lot of articles about specifically HTML and CSS. And this is just a way of organizing articles for me personally. And I guess that it's also interesting to other people. That's why I put it online.
So everything that's in here, it's something you've read yourself?
Not everything, but most stuff. Yes.
And you know the authors, which helps, I guess.
Yes, of course. Usually, like I have some I've subscribed to some newsletters, and I usually, if I have the time, I read most articles. But if I don't have the time, I scan through them and see if what's written there is actually something that I can vouch for, and
Yeah.
then I link it on the website. So I don't put any article I find about a specific property online or talk.
And do you have a certain article reading workflow? Like, do you just read it on your laptop while doing other things, or?
No, not really. There are just so many things that I do that I'm not organized at all. Like, if I find the time to do something, like if I have 5 minutes time for reading a newsletter, I would just open one of the newsletters I get and read an article. Sometimes before I go to bed. Sometimes I don't know when I find the time. There are
Yeah.
just so many things that I want to do, and I do many things at the same time. Yeah, it's a bit chaotic.
So you have a lot of tabs, I guess.
Yeah, many different browsers and browser windows and tabs. It's like it's a complete mess.
Yeah, how it should be.
Yeah, like I have 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 6 instances of Firefox open with many different tabs, and this is actually a clean version of my computer at the moment.
Yeah, this
So
took a lot of effort. Yeah.
Yes, it did. So what I wanted to say is that this is like just a collection of properties where I found articles
Yeah.
So
And I'm
you
getting the
won't.
question, can people contribute as well to this?
Oh yeah, it's also on GitHub.
Okay.
And the GitHub link is, GitHub is linked at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you will only see HTML elements and attributes where I found articles. And I was thinking about extending it and putting every single element in HTML here, not every single attribute. That would
It'll keep you
take
busy.
too much time.
Yeah.
Yes, but every single element, because I believe that most people don't know about most elements.
Yeah.
So something like Steve Faulkner and some other people did on HTML5 doctor.com, I think it's called. Like they have this HTML5 index, and this is quite handy because they list all elements, all 112, I think there are elements in HTML, and they have some explanations. But I believe this website hasn't been updated in at least 4 years. So I don't know how up to date it is. I think it's not. And this is something I've thought about doing. So extending this with every element so that people have an index of all elements that is a bit more accessible than the HTML specification.
Yeah, and the question that comes up for me is, when you start adding everything, do you want to be a sort of knowledge base, or? There goes the sound again, of course. Back to the mysterious drop-down. There was some noise. Yeah, we're hearing you again.
It's the first option that dropped on. Now I know it. I don't know. It's just a thought that I had today, actually. So I didn't think too much about it, but I thought that at least an index of HTML elements with some examples would be great. And maybe this could be also like an inspiration for people to write about certain elements where there aren't too many articles about.
Yeah, so you could say if one is empty, you could say articles wanted for.
Yeah.
Could be nice. Yeah.
The progress element or the meta element, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Article or whatever.
Talking about elements, I get somebody that says maybe a bit of a too specific of a question. I'm wondering what solution or framework you like to use for modals and date pickers.
I don't know. There are accessible modals. I don't know it by heart, but I can share some links maybe afterwards on I don't know where you share stuff on social media or Twitter. There are accessible modals. I think Hugo Giraudet built one. That's one that I remember. And date pickers, I really don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question because it's tough, right?
Yeah.
I work on a set of open source web components myself, and they're called Lion. And I think the date picker is one of the hardest things we've done. Like there's so many elements in a date picker. It's like a modal, and then with very interactive content. So it's like everything together.
Yeah. But at work, I guess it's you're in a similar situation, Eric. I have the privilege of having enough time to write everything by myself. We don't use too much third-party stuff because we try to keep our JavaScript components as small and slim as possible. And we only build the features we need, not a huge set of features that we might need in the future. And also, this is the easiest way for us to building it the way we want it and based on user testing. So we don't use frameworks too much. In our current website that we're building, we only have one third-party JavaScript, and this is for a carousel. Unfortunately, yes, we're using a carousel, and it sucks. It's one of those that's accessible, but it sucks. It's still a shitty thing.
Yeah,
and a solution to that is to get rid of the carousel, of course. But
I'm sort of proud actually. There's a Dutch website for the COVID app that we have, because every country has to have its own COVID app, of course. And it used to have a carousel, and I complained about it, and now it's gone. So if I have contributed anything to humanity, it might have been that. Because for those watching, a carousel is asking for trouble, basically. There are so many things that you can do wrong, and there is so little added value in a carousel that I've never seen a carousel that adds value. So I'm going to share a website. That's shouldIuseacarousel.com.
I just wanted to mention that one.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just so good. Well, you can guess the answer. Oh, yeah, it gets shared right after yeah, of course. Here lies Eric. He stopped the carousel once. Yeah, that would be great on a gravestone. I mean, that's it, right? What more can you want? Stop the carousel. Yeah, that's the problem with many carousels. You can't stop them. But we got rid of one. So that's certainly an improvement. And yeah, talking about HTML future plans, are you going to implement stories maybe? Because we're seeing stories everywhere popping up.
Oh yeah, definitely. Stories and also audio submissions.
Yeah, but
so audio only.
Yeah, submissions only last for a day or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, a day, like an hour.
An hour mostly.
Yeah.
That's more in terms of. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, it's just they're popping up everywhere. Like, I've never made one, I think, and they're hardly ever accessible. So I'm not very motivated either. But sure. Do you have any projects planned, like besides these two?
Yeah, I have many side projects or things that could have turned into side projects lying around.
Potentials, yeah.
Like everyone else. Yeah. Like there are so many things that I want to do, and only a fractions of the things that I want to do get actually done. So I'm not going to answer that question, because if I tell you now that I'm going to create a video course or something like that, it might happen, but it will probably not happen. So only if I'm I don't know, 95% done, I will tell you about any side projects. But
you have plenty of ideas. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
But no side projects planned, unfortunately, no.
And any talks or presentations? Is that something you're busy with?
Yeah. So I recently gave a new talk at Inclusive Design 24, which is an online conference, accessibility conference, and LA Toronto.
Everybody should watch it. Yeah.
Thanks. And CSS Cafe, and the talk is called Writing Even More CSS with Accessibility in Mind. And it's about, well, CSS and accessibility. That was the last thing that I did. And if there are conferences that want to invite me, then I'm probably going to give this talk again. And I actually had plans for another talk, which is based on stuff that we and I find for HTMHell.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to actually visit the Netherlands and give this talk this year, but we all know what's going on. So this is probably going to be my next talk about HTML and some of the hellish things that we find on other websites.
Yeah, and what can you say what it was for, or what conference? What's the plan?
It wasn't announced officially, so.
Oh, okay. Then we'll keep it like that. Yeah. Well, if you ever want to practice or you want to get some feedback, you're more than welcome. Of course, we're very curious to hear. And if it's
I actually have some articles in the pipeline, and some websites that I have to build, and some audits I have to finish, and then maybe in 3 years or something like that, I can give this talk.
Yeah. So 3 years of streaming every week. Let's see how I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, but definitely. If I have a new talk, I'm going to stream it here if you invite me again, and if people want to see it.
Yeah. So, and if you're not behind a computer screen, do you have any hobbies or things that you like to do? I mean, Vienna is a great city, so I think you've got options there.
Yeah. So in my free time, personal time, what left? I do is, what's left exactly. I like to go jogging.
Yeah.
I do that quite a lot, and from time to time also run marathons and half marathons, and I like to go to shows, to concerts.
And Vienna is pretty flat, right?
Yeah,
So
pretty
that
flat,
helps.
but we have mountains. Yeah, that helps.
Yeah. Well, I think you're better off running in Vienna than in Salzburg, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like concerts as well. So I like to go to concerts a lot in my free time and listen to music.
Yeah. And is there any not much overlap, I guess, between running, concerts, and just letting go? I guess that's good enough.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Well, I've learned a lot. I still have it on my possible side project list to ever do something about with semantic HTML, like an article or something. If you're gonna do it before me, then I'm gonna promote you because you're gonna probably be able to put a lot of examples in text.
A specific element, or what exactly
Just
are
in
you
general,
thinking of?
you know, people don't know much about semantics. Like, what is the value and why would you do it? Like all these developers that say, "Hey, I can write HTML," and then they give you a bunch of divs. I think they could value a little bit of accessibility and semantic knowledge. But that's just one potential side project, you know.
So how would you? Because I thought about that as well, and it's really hard because how would you structure it, and what kind of medium would you pick? Because if you start with, I don't know, if you want to write about the button, like you could probably write a book because there's so many aspects to getting buttons right and using buttons or not using buttons. So
how do you scope it all?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's always a challenge. I think when it comes to semantics, and what I like to do with articles is make sure that it's interesting to a lot of people. So
that's a good start.
Because when you're into accessibility, it's often about semantics. We like to say that a lot. I've also read a lot of introductions to accessibility saying, yeah, use semantic elements. But none of them so far that I found really explain what's good use of semantics and what's the value. But I also think it can go beyond accessibility. I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, screen readers benefit, but there's much more to be found. And I think it's really interesting to dive deeper and maybe find a way to show people that semantic elements are a good practice, not just for assistive technology, but for everybody. And that it's good basic HTML because it's basically an introduction to HTML. That's how it feels. Like the whole, or a large part of the value of HTML is in being semantic. So I guess that would, just coming from the top of my head, I guess that would be in it. Here in chat, I think it helps to explain the structure of HTML, elements, roles, attributes, yeah? Because it all starts with nesting, of course. That plays a big role. Then I could use the word role again. So you've got the structure, indeed, by nesting things. Then you can add attributes. Then you have the semantics, relationships, also very interesting, classes and IDs. There's so many things. I mean, you teach. So, there's a lot of...
I don't believe that this is what people need to hear. I mean, of course, that's what they need to hear, like the basics. But I would assume that on, I don't know, Egghead.io or Udacity or other websites like the video platforms, for example, and also that there are written articles about the basics on how to use HTML or how HTML works and the syntax and so on.
Yeah.
But what I believe is most interesting is the consequences of using a certain element or not using it. So what people are missing, I guess, or what I believe that they're missing is an explanation why you would use a H1 and H2 and H3 to structure a page and not just a bunch of divs or
so more like
whatever.
A guideline and reasoning.
Yes. So the explanation why use this element and not the other one, or why it would make sense to not use a div for everything. So, or for example, you would read on a lot of websites use the nav element to mark up the main navigation of the website.
Yeah. And what's
But
main
why? What are the
navigation?
benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah, but also what are the benefits? How do people use it? In like specialized articles, you would find that someone would say that there are special shortcuts that you can use to jump directly to the navigation of a website, for example.
Yeah.
So I think a dedicated place for this kind of stuff, where the benefits of using certain attributes and elements gets explained, that would be really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the reasoning behind it. I think I told you just before we started streaming, I think that's also a reason why I started streaming, to show this sort of experience, like how do we do things. And that's why I liked your question about how do you do an audit as well.
Yeah.
Because how many times can you see somebody do an audit, and how do you know how they do it? And I think the same is with writing HTML. I mean, you can inspect a lot of websites, but if you're comfortable writing diffs, then why would you inspect websites? What's there to learn?
Yeah, that's true. Also, what I find interesting, or one of the toughest things for my students, is when I show them just a screenshot of a website, and it could be any website. So just yesterday, I showed them a screenshot of smashingmagazine.com, of an article on Smashing Magazine, just a snippet, just like the heading and some information about the author and the introduction text and something like that. And I said, what do you see? And they said, okay, I see a heading. I said, yeah, okay, it's a heading, but which level?
Yeah.
And I said, I guess it's probably an H4 for an H2 followed by an H3.
Try to think about what you're building. Yeah.
Yeah, why an H3? Because it looks like a heading, but it actually wasn't a heading. So it was, the first one was a heading, but the second one was just large text. And so this is one of the hardest part, to translate a design into HTML and to try to find out what you actually see in a design. So if you see a table, it doesn't mean that it's an HTML table just because it looks like a table. It might be something else. It's just maybe just designed like a table, but it would make more sense to use a list maybe, or just some heading structure, whatever.
And is that something you would expect to be decided by a developer or by a designer?
You can't expect that of designers, I would say, not of most designers. Of course, in a perfect world, there would be a kickoff meeting where everyone talks about usability and accessibility, and then we all decide together, a team of I don't know, usability people and design people and developers, and we decide together on the design, and then we build it, and we're all happy and
dancing.
We live in a perfect. Yeah, that just doesn't happen. So the designer should understand what they're designing and what the purpose of each element is, and not just how it should look like. So of course, yes, but also the developer should know, ideally before the designer starts designing, what each thing on the page does and what it's for. But this is just not like what I experience in real life. Usually I just get a design and they tell me, build this in HTML and CSS.
So your design is an image?
Or a PSD file or Figma or whatever.
Yeah.
Or yeah. So what I would, so this is an idea actually for your stream, something you could do. I don't know if you already did it in the past, but you can just take a design and explain why you believe that the thing you see is a specific HTML element or a specific pattern in HTML, or why you would translate it to HTML in a certain way. Because
it sounds like I should ask you to do that.
Maybe I could do that. Yes, why not?
Yeah,
that's actually something that we both can do that, because that's really tough. I believe that's one of the hardest things in front-end development. So it's not learning HTML or learning CSS or how to build a layout, but actually to learn this language of translating a visual design into a structured document, and also seeing people that aren't seeing things that aren't on the screen. So for example, just because there is no heading doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a heading in HTML, at least.
Yeah.
Or a certain structural element or something like that.
Thinking about the structure. Yeah, somebody also says, sometimes I wish the browser had screen reader hotkeys for page navigation. They are quite handy. So, for example, we have landmarks, which I think are a great invention, and we have heading structure.
Yeah.
But there
is a landmark
used...
plugin.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a landmark plugin for Firefox and Chrome, I think, you can install and then use
Yeah.
shortcuts to jump to certain landmarks.
Yeah, I have one as well. It's really, really nice just to get a grasp of how a page is built.
Mm.
I also have this side project, of course, of a browser extension.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it mainly filters stuff, so it's there to improve the experience of the user. For example, it cannot have positive tab indexes when you enable a filter, which I think
Okay.
can mostly be an improvement only. I think it would be nice to have these kind of things. You think like, hey, a browser is missing this. We can improve the experience of the user, make use of the HTML, and then semantics also mean more than accessibility, which I think is really good. But yeah, I'm kind of derailing there. Somebody else says, I think an important part of semantics is explained in WCAG's fourth principle, robust. By making sure you use semantics, you allow the end user to edit it to their needs. By building on top of it, and you future-proof your content for future updates to user agents. Yeah, the thing is, a page of divs can feel really robust as well. And that's the danger of what's robust. I think in WCAG, robust is mainly about technology not basically crashing on whatever you've built. Not now and not in the future. And that's easy when you follow specifications. But in theory, a page filled with divs is perfectly valid HTML, so it could be robust. But there's no value in there. Like, it doesn't communicate anything.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you see the page you're building or the site you're building and different states of the page. So if you just look at the final product, so if this is what you imagine the page look like this the design that you get from a designer, and this is how it should look like, and this is the only and final state, then it could be a div soup. But if there are certain, for you personally, certain milestones of a website or certain versions that work in a certain scenario, then just some divs aren't enough. And what I'm trying to say is that when I design a website, I start with the HTML only. So I don't touch CSS, I don't touch JavaScript. I build the markup, the structure and the markup first. And if this looks fine, then I add the CSS layer.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's often like content leads to markup, to structuring things, and only then you start with the visual.
Yeah, and if you do that, so if you really want to make this first step work, and it's not just one step, which means final product, but if there are multiple steps, and one of those steps is HTML, and you really want to make a good HTML document, then you also get a robust document usually, or at least the foundation of your website is robust.
Yeah,
you can still fuck it up with CSS and JavaScript, but the foundation is good.
Of course you can. Creativity comes back around. Yeah. Yeah, somebody also says, I think accessibility annotations on wireframes or right specifications, these are good tools to make designers and developers work together on semantics. Yeah, because in the end, we often talk about accessibility, and accessibility, when we talk about WCAG, is like a sort of minimum goal.
Mm-hmm.
Accessibility is when you make something technically usable, so you're not excluding people. Mm-hmm. But there's also the whole thing of inclusive design, and you want people to actually be able to use it and enjoy using it and go into the usability of things. Yeah. And I think proper wireframes, annotations, semantics, they are part of a user experience. Like if you have a good heading structure, that increases the usability of your page. So if you have UX designers and you can talk to them about something like heading structure, I think you're talking about the user experience. So, yeah, if you can do that, that would be really nice. But depends on where you work, how it's structured, and
yeah. For like, I'm a developer now for about 12 years now, and I barely got the possibility to talk to a designer or to talk about a design before they started designing. I used to be a freelancer only for most part, and like the process was pretty much every time the same. They would call me, they would tell me, hey, we have a website, the design is ready, how much? and then I would tell them how much I want for that, and then they send me the design,
Yeah.
and then I start working. And that's the usual process, unfortunately. Now it's a bit different because now that I work for the city of Vienna, we focus on web accessibility and performance and quality. Like we want to build the most accessible and the fastest and just the dopest shit possible.
Yeah, and it's a
But
requirement.
yeah, it's a requirement on top of that. But in my experience, it usually doesn't work that way. And even if you're in a large company where there are dedicated teams for certain parts of a product and where you have designers and people and developers work together, it's often a matter of time and budget, which is missing.
Yeah. You can pick whatever you like, but you won't have any of them. No time, no budget. It's like, yeah. We've already talked so much. I think I just want to say thanks. If there are any more questions for you, I guess this is the time to ask. I'm gonna certainly use your quote from Max.
Yeah.
About the sugar.
Please do it.
Because it's a great quote. I'm glad you used it and shared it with us. If there are no other questions, you are always available on Twitter. That helps a lot.
Yes.
People can contribute to HTML.
Oh yeah, please contribute. If I can say some words about contribution.
Yeah, sure.
There are different ways of contributing. So the easiest way for me personally is the way Eric chose, which is forking the project, or finding the GitHub, forking it, adding a submission, creating a pull request, and the only thing that I have to do is just to review it and merge it, and that's it.
Yeah.
This is the easiest way. But if GitHub is not your thing, or Git is not your thing, or if you aren't sure if you
could even look at my recording. I think we did the whole Git workflow in the recording as well. So
yeah.
And if there are any questions, you can bother me for that as well. Meaning Git it's something we have to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you're not sure if the things you are explaining are explained well, or if it's correct, or if there's anything missing, you can always contact me on Twitter or on GitHub. You can create an issue and we will work on a certain piece of code together. Or if you just find something and you don't have the time or you don't want to work on it, just tell me and I'll put it online if I think that it fits. So there are different ways. You can contribute 100% or not at all.
Yeah, and even a conversation about it can be really interesting.
Yes.
I mean, it's interesting to think about code and to discuss it. At least for me, it's a goal to go deeper than just posting stuff. I've also been replying to some GitHub issues for specifications and stuff. And
oh, cool.
People know so much, and it's always interesting to meet people with different backgrounds and different opinions. And I think it's always a learning experience, and especially stuff like this where you give advice. There's so many angles to consider. So I hope people will contribute. There's already somebody saying, I'll remember to contribute when I spot some smelly code. I'm sincerely hoping that nobody will spot smelly code. But yeah, when they do, at least they can share the experience, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you offer everybody a platform, not just to share what you find, but also to improve it, because I think that's really good to be constructive. And I think that's it for this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the questions. It's been a very good
Thanks so much for having me
this way. Yeah, thank you.